the one, the only, Ben Sion. Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today we're doing Nazir, Daf Mem test number 49. Pretty short Daf today. And Ian with Ben Sion can actually veer from Hilchos to Zeros to talk about Hilchos Lashon Hara. Maybe the most important halacha, Hilchos Lashon Hara, comes to the surface on today's Daf. I want to talk about that because it's interesting to me. I give this year, it's interesting to me. I like doing things that are practical. There's no more halacha which is more practical than some halacha of Lashon Hara, or maybe the most important halacha of Lashon Hara. The first halacha of Lashon Hara, as discussed by the Chavetz Chaim in his famous book. Mem Tem and Aleph, the top word. Rabbi Akiva Michti. We had a machlokas Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, how they darshan the pasuk by a Nazir. What do they use the word la'aviv, v'limo, lecha, v'lachoso, which are seemingly redundant because the Torah already said that a Nazir can't be mitam himself both for a chokim and for a krovim. Rabbi Akiva Michti. Loshna kohen gadol lehudei, v'loshna kohen gadol lehu Nazir. Nafka malachav. Right? Rabbi Akiva said the word echav says he's a kohen gadol and a Nazir. So obviously, if he's one or the other, also he can be mitame for a mace mitzvah. That's he lechav. He can't be mitame for a mace mitzvah. He could if he's a kohen gadol and a Nazir simultaneously. Certainly for one. So what do you need la'aviv limo? La'aviv limo lamali. Why do you need that? Soricha, you need the because of aviv, which said aviv. The reason you're not mitame for your father, there's no guarantee. As much as we like to think that our father is really our father, there's no 100% guarantee that he is, because, right, we know the mother gave birth to you, right? There's evidence in the hospital that your mother gave birth to you. There's pictures from it, but the father, it could have been from anybody. It could have your mother cheated on your father. We don't like to think that, but so therefore, it's not for sure that your father is being mitame for. About imo, the audience say your mother for sure gave birth to you, so 100% sure. So even if you're a Nazir, a kohen gadol, you should mitame for her because of Rahmana imo. What's that imo? Hava mina imo lilitamala. Delav azal zara basra. Right? The generations don't go after the mother; they go after the father in terms of inheritance. Right? A son from the father inherits. A son from the mother does not necessarily inherit. Also, the shevet you're part of is dependent on your father. Aval aviv came on number more. It says many times in the Torah for your family based avosam. Basically, your family situation is reckoned based on your father. Practically, you take the last name of your father. Ema litamele. You should become tummy for your father because it's a closer kinship. Kamash Milan, no. Both of these cases, whether it's Aviv or Imo, neither case you're mitame for them. Al kol nafesh meis lo yavo lamali. Now back to the pasuk about kohen gadol, right? Why does it say these words, right? Any nefesh he shouldn't be mitame for lo yavo lamali. So the Gemara darshans al kol top of Memtenem base al kol afuke rachokim. Al kol to tell you that people are not designing krovim. Mace. Why does it say? It doesn't have to say the word mace. Because it could have said alcohol nafshos lo yavo. Mace la fuke krov. Even if design krov, you're not mitame for them. Nafshos could have said alcohol mace. Why does it say call nafshos mace? La fuke revi is dam shiatza mishnei mesim shem mitame ba'oel shenemar al call nafshos mace lo yavo. To tell you that even though normally only a revius of blood is mitame. What about a revius is combined from two different dead people in an oel, right? So therefore, nafshos is plural. Tell me, even if the revius dam, we're going to see in the next Mishnah that a revius dam generally has significance, as opposed to a Nazir. Actually, this halacha much now you need more than a revius dam, but a revius dam usually is the amount that's mitame ba'oel. If you're under the same structure, the same roof as a revius dam, you become tameh. Even if it came from two different people, even though you had an eighth of a lug from one mace, an eighth of a lug from another mace, they combine to a drop or a revius dam or revius halug. So therefore, that would be mitame. That's what Rashi says. You're not allowed to mitame him. To me, it seems lafuke to tell me. Basically, I'll go with Rashi's explanation or the Mefarsh's explanation that even in that case, a Kohen Gadol can come into contact with Tumah. Can't go in the OL with a Revius Adam, even from two people. The Mishnah says, Al Elu Tumos Hanazir Megaleach. Right? We said that Nazir is only, right, he's not allowed to be Matame for corpse Tumah. We said for Mitzora and Zavi is. What types of corpse Tumah is he Matame? And specifically, this Mishnah talks about that it is so serious and zero, so he dismantles his count, and he also has to bring 3 karbanos, count 7 days of Tara, and bring 3 karbanos, and shave his head. So what? A dead person. Al kazayas menameis. Doesn't have to be a full person, a full dead person. Even a kazayas, an olive's amount from a dead person. Al kazayas notzel. Kazayas is talking about his flesh. Al kazayas notzel is talking about a gel or a liquid that oozes from the dead person. Kazayas is that. Valmole, kazayas is about 1 ounce. Valmole tarvud rekev. Also, if the body has decomposed and now it's ashes or dust, right? So the amount that fills a spoon, right, of dust, that also is matame. Al shedra of al golgoles. Let's say you only have the spine, a full spine, a full vertebrae, 18 vertebrae, a full spine of al golgoles plus the skull together. That's enough as a bone. Val aver min hames. Even if you have 1 full limb from a dead person, al aver min achai. It's even if it's a live person, he decapitated an arm, or decapitated a head, you can still live, but he's not going to live anymore. But you cut off his arm or something like that. It's a full aver. Sheishalav basar karoi. It has the amount of flesh that could regenerate to form a gazai. Even though presently it doesn't have a gazai, as long as it could regenerate, if it was still attached to the person, it's not going to grow when it's not attached to the person. But if it were attached to the person, it would still grow. So to make a gazai, that would be enough. Or if you have a certain amount of bones, generally the halacha is, when it comes to Maseches Olos, it says not chatzi kav, revius it rova hakav. A kav is approximately, the article says, between 1.5 to 2.5 quarts, or basically 1.5 to 2.5 liters, filling up a bucket full of bones. That's a whole kav. A chatzi kav would be, would be closer to, between 0.75 and 1.25 quarts, or 1.25 liters. Basically, that is the amount of bones that would be matame. Even though normally, when it comes to olos, you become tame for revius. The halacha is that you're not megaleach. It doesn't end your nazirus. You don't shave your head and go through the whole procedure unless there's a chatzi kav. A chatzi logdam. Similarly, even though we just learned, or vias adam is matame, but a chatzi log, you need double the amount. A log is about 12 to 20 ounces, so chatzi log is about 6 to 8 ounces, basically a cup. Even though revias halog normally is matame, this is a different mission to tell you that it ends in the zirus, so he has to galeach and bring the karbanos, and chatzi log down. So lachem mashum sin adam, azil adam al magan al masan va'olan. All the aforementioned things, whether you touched them, whether you carried them, even by not touching them, or whether you're in the same oil as them. But that's something to say, if you have a bone the size of a barley seed, so there, it's matame, only if you touch it or carry it, but not if you come in the same roof with it. Al elo nazir galeh, he shaves his head, and he has to sprinkle the may pour on him the 3rd and 7th day. So right? He has to start recounting. He only starts to recount once he becomes tar, and he goes to the mikvah on the 7th day, and he has Erev Shemesh, Shkia. And then he brings the karbanos. We're going to see later on in the Masechta, it's not clear, does he start counting after he brings his karbanos, or does he start counting after he becomes tar, he goes to the mikvah, and he has Erev Shemesh. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, after Meir died, Rabbi Yehuda said to his students, Al yikantu talmidei Rabbi Meir lakan. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda were, they fought a lot. They had a lot of machlokesim all over Shas. Rabbi Meir had his talmidim, and Rabbi Yehuda had the yeshiva. He said, don't let Rabbi Meir's talmidim want to come learn from the next biggest rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda. So he said, don't let Rabbi Meir's talmidim come into here to learn with me. They're contentious. They ask a lot of questions. They're not asking questions because they want to delve into the Torah and understand it properly. Saying they're just coming to ridicule me. They're coming to prove me wrong, right? When you ever ask a question, people think about, I thought about this a lot when I was younger, and I used to go to shiurim of the big rabbis that I went to their shiurim when I was much younger. A lot of times I had an urge to raise my hand and ask a question, but some of the times I just wanted to prove how great I was, and to make the rabbi look wrong. You have to really decide: did you want to really do it to make the rabbi look bad, or are you just doing it because you really wanted the Torah? Most people, when they're young, they just want to show off. And that's why they ask their question. Better not to raise your hand and ask a question. In fact, my first day in Yaakov Friedman, when I was 21 or 22 years old, it was the first year we were learning Perek Meruba, the seventh Perek of Baba Kama, and we were learning the sugya on Daf Samech, I believe, about Tavro Shasya, and I learned some Tosfos Rid or something like that. He gave this long shir, Friedman. He gave like 2 hour shir, and I had this question from the Tosfos Rid, and I'm sitting all the way in the back. It was my first shir ever there. There was a lot of Talmidim were much closer to him than me, and I'm thinking, and I have this question from Tosfos Rid, which would just basically destroy everything the Rosh Hashiva was saying up until that point. It was a long shir, an hour and a half, 2 hour shir, and I had a really good question from Tosfos Rid. And I was deciding whether to say it. I wanted to pick up my hand and say it. Obviously, it was only a question from those who's read. There's other Rishonim who could have learned, like the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Friedman, but I decided not to pick up. And I debated back years, I think one time later I asked a question. And then one time, a couple of weeks later, I asked a question in the middle of the learning Seder to Rabbi Friedman, and he actually quoted my question during his shir in my name. So that made me feel pretty good. Maybe it was a schus because I didn't try lekafcheno b'halachos. I tried to disprove his thesis. I think that's really what I wanted to do back then. But I was quiet, and I think it was the right decision. So you have to always decide. So Rabbi Yehuda's there, and the Talmidim, they're just coming to make me look bad. Dachach Sumkos wasn't happy. V'nichnas, he was a Talmud or a mayor. Amar lehem kachshan ali Rebbe Meir, and he wanted to tell Rebbe. He taught it. They were talking about this Mishnah. He says, Rebbe Meir taught him, "Elo tumos anozim galeach al ameis al gazayas ben ameis on a dead person, and a gazayas ben ameis." Caused Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was very angry, and Sumkos told him, "Amar lehem lo kach amarti lechem al yikantu talmidei Rebbe Meir lekam nishak anshonin." Right? Al gazayas ben ameis ben galeach al ameis lakoshka. Why do you have to teach me on a fully dead person? Obviously, if gazayas ben ameis, an olive amount from a mace, an ounce of flesh from a mace, a Nazir is megaleach, certainly from a whole body of a dead person. So he was upset that he was quoting this, trying to cause problems in the shir. We're going to stop over here. We're in the middle of the story, but I know it sounds like a pretty good story, but we'll finish the story tomorrow. But I do want to address in Ian with Ben Sion, how could Rabbi Yehuda say such a thing? It sounds like Lashon Hara. Don't let the Talmidei Meir, because they are contronim, they're contentious, and they're trying to get me to look bad. It was annoying to him. Right? He could have answered them. They'll ask questions. Rabbi Yehuda was a big rabbi. He could have answered their questions. Seemingly, this is a question of saying Lashon Hara al emes. It was true. Rabbi Yehuda really believed they're contentious. They're just asking questions to make them look bad. Is there really a case of toelis over here? Right? According to the Mishnah Berurah, according to the Rav Chavetz Chaim, you're only going to say Lashon Hara if it's for toelis, right? To save someone from a loan, an investment, someone's going to steal money from them, a bad shidduch. Does this really fall into the category of toelis? They're going to annoy him, right? What about, if I wanted to talking about a person and I say he's a fat person, toelis is, I enjoy saying the truth. This is a similar thing over here. They're gonna annoy him. That's what the article. They're gonna annoy him. So what? Is that a justification for saying Lashon Hara on the truth? Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion. We talk about Hilchos Lashon Hara, what I have to say about it, coming up next.